All right, greetings. We are going to get started for our August 12th meeting. And I'd like to call this meeting to order and also welcome those who have joined us today, including our new members. So today we're just going to go around and share our names and our interests in joining the task force while we have committed to this work. And we'll start here to my left.
Good evening, Kim Middlebrook, of the Office of Community Safety and Empowerment for the City of Knoxville, and our office provides staff support for the task force.
Hello, Tiffany Davidson, Deputy Director of Community Safety and Empowerment. I serve as a facilitator of the task force, but I also supervise the Office of Safety and Empowerment as well as the Knoxville.
Linda Kingsley, 6th District City Council. I serve on the task force. It's near and dear to my heart because this is a resolution that I brought forth from the community and from the city to make sure that we were actually atoning for renewal and the devastation and unintended consequences that resulted in it. So today I'm just excited for all of you to have that shared passion and commitment to serving this task force too.
Hi, my name is Stella Richard, and I'm from the Magnolia Avenue campus, obviously, and we're really excited to be here and share and learn as much as I can about the task force and to give any sort of knowledge that I may have that will help sort of bring all the things that you talked about to fruition.
I'm Brandon Hart, born and raised in Knoxville, East Knoxville, and my passion is basically leading the community better than how I found it. I've seen a lot of the positives and negatives growing up in East Knoxville. I'm a military veteran and commercial pilot.
I'm Stanley Taylor, and I'm born and raised also in Knoxville, but on the west side, not the east side. And I am on the task force because of my commitment to my career for equity in the city.
All right, my name is Tanisha Baker, and I serve as chair of the task force. I'm a native Knoxvillian. I think my lanes include analytics and community engagement. I've been very committed and passionate about uplifting equity in Knoxville for all citizens, actually, and was very excited to serve in this role and on this committee to follow through the vision of Councilwoman McKenzie.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Vincent Jones. I'm also from Knoxville. They have deep ties to the East Knoxville community as well. Went to Eastport growing up. Been away in Atlanta for a couple of decades, but I'm happy to be back home and I'm looking forward to making an impact in the community.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Deborah Porter, and I don't know where I am right now. I was telling George, he sat down, and usually, I'd go right over and speak to him and everything. I said, you're in the zone. I said, I don't know where I am, George. I'm trying to get this computer to work. But anyway, I am glad to be here. I am a Knoxvillian, as Brendan said, born and bred here. And I am just grateful to serve on the task force. I am a community volunteer. I told someone several weeks ago with the Knoxville Prep Charter School, I said, I guess I volunteered over there as well, but I said, I've never been paid for anything that I do, so I'm just glad to be able to get a stipend or something. But I work for New Direction Healthcare Solutions, so that's my day job, if you will. But to be able to serve and bring change in the community, that's what I'm here to do, and that's sort of my volunteerism, period, just to bring change and make a difference.
I'm Dave Miller with the First Horizon Bank. Probably, I guess, on the task force in part because of my financial expertise, but even though I'm not from Knoxville originally, we've lived here about 7 or 8 years, moved here from Memphis where we were for sort of 3 decades, so among other things, that spending that much time in Memphis gave me an understanding of the kind of issues of socioeconomic disparities and the impacts that can have. Originally from the Northeast, but Yeah, I will tell you, I just have, in part because of the way I grew up, not of means, and can relate to not necessarily living in poverty, but issues of constrained finances and how that can affect you. And then certainly in my day job, I mean, ultimately, bankers are here to try to make the community better and stronger. So it's just, it's an honor to serve on the task force and be helpful in any way that I can. So good to be here.
Join them with bread, born and bred. And that's what I really like that we got people who are not born and bred. Home staff.
Don't hold it against us.
No, yeah, pay attention, pay attention. No, my wheelhouse, if you will, my perspective is from with the lawyers and I'm an attorney. I was raised probably 2423 Park View Avenue, about a few blocks away. Used to come in this building all the time. Used to be Catholic high school, and really, it caught my attention when Councilwoman Kinsey was able to get that passed, because what happened to the black community, particularly with urban removal, and it didn't just happen here in Knoxville, but it did happen here in Knoxville, was unfair. And so I view this task force as an opportunity to try to correct some of that. I don't know if we'll ever be able to correct all of that. But please be here, please be a part of it. Appreciate being able to serve.
All right, so again, we welcome you. We appreciate the expertise that all of you offer to this committee. And as mentioned, while we can't undo the past, we can definitely have an influence on our outlook and outcomes for the future. And that's where our work is, how we look at present and future, and how we can best ensure equitable practices and policies moving forward. So that being said, Mr. Stanley will give us our rules of decorum.
Anyone that is wishing to speak on the public forum can sign up by completing the online web form on the task force webpage and/or contacting Tiffany Davison by signing up in person prior to the start of the meeting. Our speakers will be given 3 minutes to address the task force, and please do not use profanity and remember to stay on topic. Those who fail to adhere to those rules may be ruled out of order and asked to step away. For those who are listening, please note that you may not disrupt a public meeting from the audience. Those who do may be asked to leave. We appreciate everyone's respect for these rules.
And our roll call.
Councilwoman McKenzie.
Here.
Vincent Jones.
Here.
Dean Stella Bridgman.
Here.
Dr. Mary Gattah. Brandon Harden.
Here.
Stanley Taylor.
Here.
Tanisha Fitzgerald Baker.
Here.
Darren Porter. Here. George Underwood.
Here.
Anderson Olds. Dave Miller.
Here.
Thanks.
All right, we will approve our minutes. I know we slept since June, but if you've had an opportunity to review, if you have any questions, comments, or modifications, if you share those at that time. If not, I'd like a motion for approval of the minutes.
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, and for current members, exempt from this particular vote are our new members, since you weren't here in June. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. And I'm gonna turn this over now to Tiffany Davison for our staff report.
Yeah, so we have paid out majority of the grant awards for the 24-25 grant cycle. Post-project reports are due December 31st. Some of the programs went into the winter, so we just have one kind of due date just to make it simple. And so essentially the hope is to have a summary of the reports to report back to you all after the new year. We also have the grant specialist job that will be posted in the coming days. I will send you all the grant specialist job description for you all to send out if you so choose, or if you have kind of areas that you think that an individual will be fit for the position. So I'll keep you all posted on that. It's still kind of working the process of HR, finance, and all those things. And then the last thing in your packet is just kind of a one-pager of previous guest speakers that have addressed the task force. We did a survey, as you all mostly completed, and one of the suggestions was that it would be helpful to know who has presented to the task force in the past, so that we kind of know who we would like to see speak to us in the future. So that's just something to have handy, not necessarily anything to do with the particular. That's the staff report.
All right, thank you. And so next on the agenda would be committee reports. We did not have committee meetings. They will resume on August 19th. And so for our next full committee meeting, we should have reports from each of those. So for today, I'm going to ask, or I'm going to, can I make Yes, I have, would like to hear from a guest speaker who was originally going to speak last year. And then we ran out of time and agenda space, so we brought him here today to speak. And could I get a motion to suspend committee reports in lieu of having our guest speaker, Pastor Andrea Sackley, and the Educator Resource Center?
So moved.
Sir.
All in favor? Perfect. So, Pastor Sackley, if you would come up and present to the task force about the Educator Resource Center.
Is it best when we face you all?
Face us, please. And you can, they'll pass you.
Let me start by thanking you all for the work you do in making our community brighter and better and make sure equity can take place in the heart of our city. So thank you for that. As you said, my name is Andrew Osakwe. Moved to Knoxville about 10 years ago to work full-time at a local church. Inside of that church, there was also a school connected to it. And so what I learned about the church is we're sometimes great about going out beyond what's currently in front of us and missing an opportunity to touch the people right next to us. You can wait to read these until we get to them. So inside that school, I ended up getting a phone call from an educator one night telling me that their child was getting ready to commit suicide. So I jumped in my car, ran out there as quick as I could. It was over a girl, so I was able to get over it pretty quick. But then she had me stay in the kitchen and just counsel with her and her husband. So fast forward, a few years later, I became a full-time pastor in Monroe County. And Chief David Roush began to tell me things were getting more challenging in Knoxville in 2020, during the year of COVID. So my wife and I walked away from 100% of our income, 100% of our health benefits, with a 3- and 1-year-old to plant a church inside of Ridgeville Apartments. The heartbeat of that was so that if we have single mothers, we have heroes, and if we have people selling drugs, we got entrepreneurs. So we ended up opening a restaurant next to the Gams called So Good, where we hired those single mothers, hired people who want to sell drugs, hired some who aged out of foster care, and started the movement from there. But next door to Gams, where y'all know the city, Maynard Elementary sits right there. And so that's when the school came to us and said, hey, we have no money for our educators. Can you at least give us a staff lunch? Now, granted, we struggling too, but of course we never said no. We found a way to give that free lunch. Then they came to us and said, hey, our educators have no more printing paper. We end up providing $1,500 just to make sure educators have enough paper to print on. And what Knoxville has done a really, really good job of is children's programs. Right here is Reggie Jenkins, Denise, with Freedom Schools, even Emory, and all these wonderful programs that I love and admire. But if you ask, well, what's here for the people in Region 5? 1 out of every 2 children are economically challenged. Educators are going in their pockets every day, putting stuff back on the shelves, right, in order to provide for students who are in need what's one place they can go 5 days a week to get the support they need. And the crickets of society being stated. So that's when we started the Educator Resource Center. In 2018, Ronnie Chandler with Project Grad opened the corner of her office. I want to give honor to her until it started there. And now God has opened up the door to bless us with a building to lease that we hope to pay off by the end of this year while we have exclusive rights to buy it. We did our first pilot this past week. 177 educators showed up from 6 schools with only a 7-day notice. Austin East, Fulton, Vine, Sarah Green, Spring Hill Elementary, Maynard, all came that day and were served. I'm gonna take my last 2 minutes just to read to you what the educators said on why they need this first of its kind of place, not just in Tennessee or Knoxville. This is the first time in the United States of America. that there's a place that offers 5-day-a-week support to the heroes who wake up every day, who work more free overtime than any job on the planet. Can everybody say amen? All right, so let's read what they said. First page, I'm only gonna read these, I'm finished, guys. Why is the Educator Resource Center needed? Teaching is a lot of work, exclamation point. Emotional, physical, mental, and spiritual. It's easy to become burned out and overwhelmed. The Educator Resource Center is a great way to ease some of those burdens and recharge in order to be the best we can be for our students. It's good to feel cared for and supported. Hopefully we'll use this place multiple times a week. Next page, I'm almost done. Region 5, which is where we are, has a unique and gifted group of educators who encounter different challenges every day. Helping us helps our families. Last 2 pages. Having a space dedicated for educators would be amazing. A lot of us work more than our one job just to enjoy a few extras in life, just to provide for our families. Let that sink. Most of us work more than one job just to have a few extras to provide for our families. Many of us are single parents, and having a place to rest means more than words can explain. I will use this place as often as I can. Last page, that's one great. We need a space to feel appreciated and to be able to take care of ourselves so we can take care of our students. The final page, which I'll pass out to everybody, is just what we're hoping to accomplish. And it pretty much explains what the big goal is. That's a picture of the actual building that we're renovating. We exist to empower educators every day. Phase 1 simply explains our first objective is to raise $2.6 million in order to terminate the lease and permanently secure the facility. Phase 2 is to renovate the inside of our building to provide the services below. So below what they'll get is a safe space, is the one thing they kept asking us about. Number 2 is free counseling services, which is a big deal, because right now they can only see a counselor in Nashville through video. That's what's supplied for our educators. Number 3, free home and school supplies, amen? For that person working a second job, needing something not just for school, but for home. We got diapers that we need, which we have a relationship with people providing diapers. Peer-to-peer community, peaceful lobby and lounge, an exercise room. A lot of people can't afford gym memberships. We have it for free right there. Last few things, workout classes, relaxation room with some massage chairs, free parents night out. A lot of people can't afford childcare, so imagine our building, we can take care of all those babies while mom and dad can go out and have a good time together. Last 3 things, educator events and trainings. That's what we just had a part of the other day. And free food and beverages 5 days a week. So if they're struggling financially, they can always come to a place to eat. So that's why we're hoping that whatever resources can be made available to the cause, that we're excited about it, you can hear my heart. But more importantly, our teachers are saying we need it right here in Region 5. So that's my time, and I thank y'all for listening today. We'd love to answer any questions if there are any. If not, I'll move on down to Steve.
For a question, the lady who gave you the corner of her office,
Yes, I love that lady.
I do too, that's my sister.
Yeah, she's I'm a #1 fan. Look, I'm that lady's #1 fan right there. Look, she gave me Bertina over to the other sister who helped write out everything. But so I just want you to know how meaningful your family is to us. So, anybody else? All right, love y'all.
I'm sorry, ma'am. Didn't hear it if you said it. As far as, you're firmly in phase 1 right now?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. We're in phase 1 right now. Hopefully you can get us out of it.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Anybody else? All right. Appreciate it. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you.
So as we start this season of the task force, and thank you for sharing the list of speakers. We look to hear from people who are doing great work in the community, hoping to connect them to resources and needs. And so Time Talent Treasures would benefit all of those organizations, specifically serving those African Americans, which we know are concentrated in East Knoxville, but all across the city. And Pastor Andrew, and I'm sorry, I should have asked, this is particular for Region 5?
It's starting right in Region 5, so this is where it's originally being expressed until other funding comes to expand further. But for now, this is where we're seated, doing all of our work right here.
All right, and are you open, yeah, I know you're in phase one, what day, are you open to educators or you're having the special events now?
Yeah, this events for now to raise awareness until we actually can get the building renovated so we can make it more permanent. So we'll just only do events, which will make the schools aware of until the building is paid off this year.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Madam Chair, what about the Knox County schools? Are you in communication?
Yeah, so John Roswick wrote a letter of endorsement alongside of both mayors wrote letters of endorsement, and Mike Taylor with Knox Ed wrote a letter as well. So we got all the letters, now we just need the checks to follow the letter. So everybody's on board, no one can disagree, the need is evident. We have it in the teachers writing themselves, so the teachers won't come. The teachers won't come, 177 of them said different. So we don't have to deal with the whole, will they show up, do they need this? So we took that off the table. Now it's a matter of, if you want to release to support what's needed, are you going to sit by and watch teachers? Literally, man, we got reports drinking and numbing the pain. Like, this is the reality. You know, when you can't pay bills, you got to work a second job. So hopefully, you know, we'll see some checks follow all these letters. So anybody you can name has written a letter, but now we're hoping in this phase we can see the support follow those letters. So.
All right, now on our agenda would be task force business and announcements. If there are any announcements. All right, I guess I'll make one then. There are a couple of things on my mind that I'd like for us to take action on moving forward. We have talked about, and as we have our committee meetings, I think we can create some action plans. One, I think we're going to get started with our working committees, which will be made up of members across the community supporting those items in our buckets that we think will impact equity in Knoxville. I also started thinking about our social media presence, and I want to bring that up for discussion. I think we do need a way to stay in connection with those that want to reach out to us and to provide information. We attended the neighborhood resource fair, and while there were many in attendance, we noticed many were missing. So started questioning all of the ways that communications are distributed across communities, and people gain information in different ways. And so I think us having a social media presence would be great. However, there is a challenge with the social media presence as well, because you open a door. So I just want some consideration for how we can have a positive social media presence, how we're able to answer questions and connect with communities, get suggestions and ideas, but also keep it positive. So right now, there is a way for people to reach us through the website, but that's not always the preferred method or the go-to for some of our concerned citizens. So just want you all to consider that as you move into committee meetings. The next thing, and this is also piggybacking off the neighborhood conferences, we need some swag, y'all. So while we have good information to share, if we're going to show up, which is really the emphasis that we want to show up and have a community presence at events, if we do that, we want to come correct. So I'm thinking shirts and a few other items. Tiffany's looking into some things. But the main emphasis, as I said, is that we show up. So as we hear about, and during this announcement time is a great time to share, as we hear about community events, we want to be there. It's an opportunity to connect with people, build, nurture, and sustain relationships so that we can get their feedback and be a trusted partner across Knoxville. There are a lot of initiatives going on, and we don't want to be the last to find out. So I'm encouraging that. Any other announcements?
I have a couple, Madam Chair. One community event that is happening in October, and this is where you'll hear more, get more information about that, and that's the October 5th Community Health Fair, and it is sponsored by New Direction Healthcare Solutions, and it will be on the grounds of out there in Burlington, where we are in Connect Ministries, but just want you to get it on the calendar, save the day, and we are looking for other participants in terms of resource venues, that kind of of thing, so that might be an opportunity for us as well.
Would you like for us to set, so is it open to, okay, even if you're not, well, I think we do deal with community health, the health of
Right,
our
you don't have to
community.
be a health care provider, but we'll have community providers as well.
Okay, so you'll get us that information. All right, save the date, October 5th.
And then the other is just around the corner, October 24th, it's a Kamala Day in Knoxville on Market Square.
Excuse me, August 24th.
I'm sorry, August.
October, no, that's okay.
Yeah, October. August the 24th, that's why I said it's right around the corner. August the 24th, 6 p.m. On Market Square.
All right, thank you for those announcements. Are there any others? Okay, hearing none, I'm gonna ask Christina, who's been our very supportive legal counsel, to come and share some administrative items around Sunshine Law, Robert's Rules of Order, and whatever else we need to know to be effective and efficient. So we run these meetings. Thank you.
No problem. I'm gonna have a PowerPoint, so I don't know if you'll want to kind of
Yeah.
shift around. See if You know, I tend to be pretty informal in my presentation, so if you have a question, please just go ahead and stop me and let me know. You can be on the right slide and everything, and we can go over whatever it is we need to talk about. All right, so Tiffany had asked me to do just a basic refresher on a few things. Do you want me to use this microphone? Okay. So just a refresher on things that come up a lot in terms of topics that we have questions about. So Sunshine, the City Code of Ethics, and Robert's Rules. So I want to start with Sunshine. Technically, that's called the Open Meetings Act. I put the citation there in case you want to go read it later on tonight. The task force is a governing body, according to that law, because it's a public body with more than 2 folks on it and has the authority to make decisions and recommendations. And one thing to point out, this is something that makes a lot of folks nervous, is what is a meeting? And I think that a lot of times is not really understood well in the community. So that's the convening of a government body, of a public body, for which you need a quorum to deliberate on a decision or a recommendation. So what we're talking about there is you have more than one task force member in the same room, right? And they're deliberating or they're sharing some kind of information about an item that's going to come in front of you later on. Now, that could be, you know, a complete vote on the item, or it could be a recommendation that City Council then takes up later on. But what we're talking about is not a chance meeting. You know, if you see somebody in the grocery store that's on the task force, you don't need to call me and worry about it. You don't have to worry about community meetings as long as there is no deliberation on an item that will come before you, okay? So I know in the past we've had some community members who have wanted to set up meetings outside of this forum where they wanted to kind of present on some questions and concerns from the neighborhood groups and other community organizations. That's still fine for more than one of you to attend. We just can't have deliberation going on without being in this particular public forum. And the reason for that is basically public notice. You want to give the public enough notice to be able to attend, to listen, potentially to be heard if they want to speak at public forum, etc. We do have to comply with that. That's per council resolution, one of the ones that created this task force and set up the membership and, you know, what the task is that we have in front of us. The Open Meetings Act also says that we have to, again, publish that notice, the agenda in the minutes. We do that. We have a city web page where our staff members post that for us. And it does also cover social media and informal methods of communication. So we don't want to be texting or emailing directly with other members of this task force. That's why a lot of times we ask you to let Tiffany or let Kenya know so that we can bounce it off of the entire task force once we have our meeting. We do have to have a public forum at our meetings, which we do, and you know, state law does allow us to put some restrictions on there just to keep the meeting organized and going forward in an efficient way. You know, limits on the number of speakers, the amount of time they get, and we do that in our administrative rules as well. Ex parte communication is prohibited, so direct folks to our staff. That's not gonna come up too often with the role that this task force plays, but that's where you're sitting in a quasi-judicial role and you're making a decision that might land in front of city council or court. So we're not gonna have to worry about that too often. If it comes up, of course, Tiffany and I and Kenya will all work towards helping you all through that. So any questions so far on sunshine before I switch to ethics? All right. All right, so the City Code of Ethics applies to all of our boards and commissions. It's in Chapter 1, Section 1-17, and it applies to all of the task force members, anyone that sits on those boards, like I said. As long as it's created by City Council or it's in our ordinance somehow, that's going to be covered. And it requires disclosure of any personal interest, and it's going to sometimes require recusal. We'll go over that in just a second. It also prohibits kickbacks. So the first question, when does a personal interest exist? That's where you have a financial or an ownership interest or an employment interest in something that's coming before you for some kind of a vote, whether it's the actual decision or a recommendation on that particular item. Personal interests, I do want to point out, can be your own, but they can also be from these other folks who potentially are in your family. So just something to be aware of. And the reason why this matters is whether or not recusal is required. So we do have a duty to disclose personal interests. The task force member has to do that before the vote takes place and do that on the record, so once the meeting actually begins. I would say, for the most part, I have a lot of folks on plenty of boards that I advise, and a lot of folks think, oh gosh, I knew this person 20 years ago, I probably have a conflict. Probably not, actually, unless, there's something that would lead a reasonable person to think that you do, or that you have that financial or employment or ownership interest in that item. Oh, it says BZA, it should say task force, apologies on that. So the task force member may recuse himself from voting if it's one of those other people in their family, a grandparent or a parent or a step-parent. But the recusal is mandatory if it's actually yours, your interests. There's an exception that says the law director can make a decision if he feels like it's de minimis, so basically not really all that important of a conflict that would, make that reasonable person think that there's a conflict. But that's something that y'all would do through me. So if you are ever worried about that, just let me know. Yeah.
I do want to add that if it is a family member, that should be disclosed.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Yes, absolutely. Yes, always disclose, but the question of recusal depends on whose interest that is. Good point, Ms. Thank you. Okay. So prohibitions on kickbacks. A task force member cannot accept, whether directly or indirectly, any kind of a kickback for a specific act, like voting yea or nay on something, or influencing it, or failing to perform the act. So for instance, abstaining from a vote, if that makes a difference in the outcome. And prohibited kickbacks, they do include money and gifts, obviously, but it can be through any form. So, a gift card is going to fall into that, for instance. The exception is that our legislature and, our code believes that as long as it's worth 25 or less and is not a cash or check equivalent, then it's not, big enough to matter as a kickback. Okay? All right, any questions on that before we go to Robert's rules? Okay. So Robert's rules are going to apply both for our bylaws and our administrative rules, and that basically just helps us facilitate the business of this task force. It keeps things expedited and organized in a timely way, and it also makes sure that every voice is heard, even if it's in a minority viewpoint of the task force. The role of our chairperson, and we are very blessed to have a great chairperson in front of us. Calling the meeting to order, announcing all items for consideration, recognizing speakers. And again, we do have, time limits and the amount of speaker limits as well in our administrative rules. Stating and putting all motions before the task force, enforcing the rules relating to discussion and maintaining order. And also declaring the meeting adjourned, which is probably the happiest duty at the end of the agenda. So. All right, so main motions. Those are the proposals that recommend some kind of course of action, whether it's, again, a final decision or a recommendation. This, I don't think has ever come up, but you cannot speak against your own motion, but you can vote against it. Now, why would anybody do that? Just to move the discussion along, to keep things moving during the meeting. Most motions have to be seconded. One thing to note, again, to keep the conversation moving and the agenda moving forward, you can make a second, even if you might not intend to vote on that, but just to put it before the task force so that it can get a move on in terms of getting a resolution. They should be presented generally before discussion. That doesn't always happen, and that's okay. But only one main motion may be considered at a time. And that's why every once in a while, we might get a motion, and then the discussion kind of flows in a different direction, and then we might have a motion to amend at that point. And that is perfectly normal. As Councilwoman Gwen McKenzie can attest to, absolutely. Discussion members are recognized by our chair, who then announces the end of discussion and calls for a vote or motion. And she announces whether the motion passes or fails. Amending a motion, we do this every once in a while, no big deal. Typically, friendly amendments are not, technically allowed, but we have them from time to time, and that's fine. The member who made the motion can generally ask for permission to withdraw it or make a modified motion. Best practice is to just make sure, if I make some kind of a motion, George Underwood seconds it, I go back and I say, well, actually, I want to amend it to this. We just want to have George specifically give another second to move forward on that. And it requires a majority vote. The majority vote under our administrative rules is the folks who are present and voting. So it's not that we need a majority of all folks appointed to the task force, just the ones that are here and who are voting. So, any questions?
You said you're not allowed to speak against your motion. Can you expound on that just a little bit?
Sure. Let's say you make a motion to approve $5,000 to go to some community organization. It gets a second. You can't then say, well, actually, I think this organization is not going to do very effective work, so therefore I'm going to vote against it. There's not really too much of a reason why you would do that, but it's just something to note if it ever were to come up. Yes, ma'am.
Can you make this presentation available to us?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll send it to Tiffany so she can send it out to everybody. All right, thanks so much, and I'm always here. Y'all can always reach out to me before meetings if you have any kind of questions or anything like that. I'm happy to help.
Thank you for your time.
No problem.
All right, so do we need to discuss our bylaws today?
Hopefully you all review the bylaws prior to the meeting, just to say expedite the meeting, but there is something that I wanted to just kind of bring to y'all's attention, which is the meeting frequency, how often you guys want to meet. It's written in the bylaws that we meet the second Wednesday of every month. Do you still feel confident about that? Do Mondays work for everyone? I know that's a little topic here. It can be challenging for him to make it especially consistent when we think about the forum, what those things that we need to take into account. And then, of course, the time. It's 5 p.m. still work for everyone, not just the members of the task force, but also community members, things like that. So maybe just a little bit of a discussion about the meeting occurrence would probably be helpful. In the case of we need to revise it, we don't, that's perfectly fine.
One thing I did note, or at least consider, is that when we get our working groups together and they start meeting, that we might move ours to either every other month or quarterly just to be able to capture that work, because that's going to have a lot of agenda items, a lot of focus and attention on those buckets that we want to look at for equity. And I think we've talked about us being present at those meetings as well. So if we do that, then I think we need it for enough to have happened and to be considered before coming back to our main meeting. That being said, is it within the rules to have an on-call meeting? So if something comes up of urgency in that quarter before our scheduled meeting, can we have a call meeting if it's?
Yeah, I think as long as it's within 5 business days of notice for the public.
So yeah, we just still have to give appropriate notice, but that's no problem.
All right, so that's just something to consider.
It's on page 3. Yeah. So you guys have to have within 5 business days to get appropriate notice.
No.
You can have special conference.
Any other discussion around our meeting day, time, frequency?
Mondays have, and I brought this up during discussion, when we help create these bylaws, Monday is not the best for me, but I'm willing to work my schedule as best I can to be here on Mondays. Mondays and Fridays, as everyone knows, probably the biggest flying days of the week. Best days for me is Tuesday through Thursday, but like I said, I'm able to do the best I can to attend.
All right, so if we look at Tuesday through Thursday, is there a day that's really off limits for anyone?
I think Tuesday. will be off.
Oh, Tuesday's off, all right.
Tuesday.
Wednesday, we'll just go down this. Like I said,
Thursday.
Thursday.
No
Can't
problem.
do Thursdays, all right.
I teach Thursdays.
Well, when we come with the 8th day of the week, we will. We'll fare better, so.
Well, Monday it is.
And I would say, I think part of the challenge too is thinking about, because the city council meetings are every other week, it's not as easy to schedule around, so it's a lot more challenging to say, well, the third Tuesday will be, task force day, because every now and then, the third Tuesday is gonna be a council day. So, I mean, ideally, in a perfect world, it could be, okay, well, maybe Tuesday is the day, and we just do it on the days that aren't council days, but that is really challenging to schedule with the kind of way the council schedule goes. And I don't really know how to fix that.
Well, does everybody go to prayer?
Okay. We won't be doing that.
Well, Brandon, we appreciate it because I can tell, I mean, you've been here a lot. So we can see the effort in you being here. If you can continue to do that, I think we leave the meetings on Monday and perhaps it will be helpful if we change to every other month or quarterly.
Yeah, that way it's only like one, four meetings.
I'm willing to do whatever I have to do. Just throwing that out there.
We appreciate it.
So can we also maybe just have a brief discussion about the time? Would 5:30 work better for people? I'm thinking about maybe commuting at 6 o'clock, because a lot of folks, we're getting out from work to come here sometimes even early. But could we consider our entertainment 5:30 start time? Would that be too difficult for members of the task force? I see he is.
No, so I think the consensus is to 5:30 would be fine. Is there anyone opposed to 5:30 or where that would be a barrier? All right, so 5:30 would be fine. And I think, so Monday to 5:30, now it falls to the frequency. Any ideas? Frequency?
I think until we get the working groups up and going, I think monthly works. Once we get the working groups up and going and seeing kind of how that picks up, I think we should leave it monthly unless anybody has an objection.
I don't have an objection, and I think that's what I was thinking, like, once they get started. So maybe we meet monthly and table the frequency until our working groups get up and running.
I think it's reasonable. My only suggestion is it seemed like most boards I'm on, I don't know about city committees, it seems like taking the summer off or really scaling back in those, it seems like our agendas got very light. We maybe even canceled one or two of the meetings, and so my intuition was every other month, but I think if we go monthly, maybe we meet only once over the summer. It just seems like that's kind of throwaway time of year for almost everybody.
I think that's fair. We did take off the month of July, so we'll bring that back up. By then, by summer, I hope our working committees are up and running and full steam. So we should revisit the frequency scheduling. All right, now the committees. And I've slept several nights a little bit since we talked about our committees. So if one, we could get a brief summary of the committees and the members that we have, and then confirm August 19th will be our first committee meeting day for the city.
Yeah, page
7 is the committees.
Page 7.
Starting on 7. So we currently have, in the current structure, there are 3 standing committees. It's the executive committee, which is essentially made up of your officers, and their role is to really kind of guide the agenda setting for the task force, and overall governance of task force functioning. And then we have the community engagement committee, which was tasked with thinking about kind of the public facing outward engagement pieces of the task force, how the task force can think about sharing out information, being present at events or activities, or even hosting potentially events or activities to provide information for the community that was relevant to the work of the task force. And then the investment committee, which was tasked with really thinking about how the work of the task force would be shaped, whether it was funding opportunities, things that the task force was applying for, policies or relationships that would be focused around promoting the key investment areas that the task force had identified in your strategic planning process, but yeah, that process, and then we worked to build out a framework around those areas, and the investment committee was kind of designed to drive the task force goals and policies in those particular areas. Previously, those 3 committees were meeting monthly also, and then reporting out at these meetings. There was a pretty quick turnaround between when the task force, when the committee meetings would happen, and when these meetings would happen. And I think that was also part of kind of what sparked some of the conversation around meeting frequency, was to make sure that we were giving enough time for the committees, whether in this structure or thinking about the transitioning from maybe the committee structure. Obviously, I think the executive committee is just going to exist, right? But whether or not some of this work now shifts to the working groups and providing more time for either the committees and or the working groups to actually plan, implement, and do some of the actual work before having to come back to a meeting to report we're working on it. So that's just kind of a high-level overview of the committees as they currently exist. And I don't recall, I'm going to try to remember from memory who was on which committee, but that's going to fall apart very quickly. You were on investment. I think Councilwoman McKenzie, were you on community engagement? Executive committee, investment, community engagement, and I think Anderson was investment. And I think other members still exist that didn't roll off. That's sort of the layout. I did better than I thought.
I remember that when you shared that. All right, so something to consider then for this item is that our hopes in engaging the community, a part of that really prompted the desire for these working groups,
Yes.
which would be made of community members. So perhaps that is the committee for that. Now, we do ask that each working group has a sponsor, which is made up of someone from the task force, but I think that one might actually be the working group to help us with community engagement and communication. The investment, however, I think we do need some strategic and specific research, oversight, and considerations for that. Although we'll take recommendations that will come from probably all of the working groups in all areas. I think the task force needs some ultimate responsibility in the investments. So those are just suggestions and things I'm putting up for consideration as we think about the committees that we need moving forward. I do agree with the frequency, but we don't have time to do the action and actually have something to report on. So what is our decision for today, or is it today?
Madam Chair, may I?
Yes.
For the investment committee, and I was a part of the investment committee, we played an integral part on the grant process as well this time, so just.
Speaking of grants, thank you for that. And so that would be important. And also for an agenda item moving forward, to think about when we will start our next grant cycle.
We'll be discussing it this year.
Okay, perfect. All right.
Yeah, let me get into this one first.
Okay. I understand. Any other discussion? All right.
But no, I think that, Ms. Carter made a really good point that the investment committee did play a very critical role in that, and that's something that I think as staff, we would very much love to see going forward. Is, for at least in OCSC, for all of our grant making process, we try to engage outside folks in helping to make those recommendations back to staff. And you all have a ready-made committee already designed for that specific purpose, and I think that that'll be a critical piece going forward.
Okay, perfect.
And before we move forward, as we are talking about bylaws again, so the committees, you guys actually serve a 1-year term on each of those committees. So now we're trying to be a time in which we should probably go ahead and figure out if you guys need to serve on the committees that you have served on. And then of course we have new committee members that need to make their designation for those 2 options. Either being the community engagement or the investment committee. So if you guys are okay, we can probably still figure that now since we're meeting this. Okay. Which one's start with you? All right. Which one?
What was that?
Community engagement.
Just
Executive. Exec, okay. Gibson, which committee?
I have an interest in both, but I'm leaning towards
Communication.
I believe there is opportunity if you are interested to support 2 committees. We just didn't want to put too much strain on one person. If you have an interest, I don't think we're gonna turn you away.
Maybe interest in this,
What's the other one that interests you?
the investment.
The investment, okay.
Either one of favorite. I work in church.
All right, Ms. Deborah.
Investment committee, but as an officer, I guess
Yeah,
I'm
so
on.
you're correct. Should I guess?
I'll continue to bloom where I'm planted, I'll stay in the investment.
Perfect. You saw, I was looking like, I was really considering something different.
So I can accept any other answer.
All right, and then George.
Yeah. Keep it.
Sounds good. Okay.
And we'll reach out to Dr. Patel and Mr. Owens and see where their interests are.
On the 19th, when we have committee meetings, can you go over location and time? And then also on that day, we need to talk about frequency, but each committee can do that. But for now, location and time, we know the day, but they were staggered, so I'm just trying to see
Yeah.
where we're gonna be and what time.
Yeah, and I anticipate that, that will change as far as the time, so we'll be ready 2 meetings concurrently somehow, some way, but essentially from 5 to 7, but I'll send out those small details.
Okay, I appreciate that. Okay, did we have anyone sign up for public forum?
Did not receive any requests.
All right, with that being said, if there are any other final announcements or words from committee members? You have one?
I just wanted to add, when we were doing announcements, Casey Homecoming is October the 3rd through the 5th, and it starts on that Thursday. They have the President's Gala on that Friday, Homecoming yard on that Saturday. So you go to their website, they have a lot of different activities that are just fun.
So the website, and so now that you mentioned that, that will also be offered in something. Lots of, what we talk about not having anything to do with the name tags. Sure.
When we talk about getting a new grant person, I'm trying to understand, do we have a role at all as far as anything happens to that grant person? We're just, how does that work?
So I think what will happen this time, because we are more aware of what we need from that person. One is they're gonna send us the job description, so we're gonna be in agreement on those expectations. And then, as before, I believe a committee member, at least one, maybe two, will sit in on interviews, is that correct? And then we also discussed if any actions are to be taken with that person, that it'll come before the committee to at least to have our awareness and input prior to.
And so, and just so that, and you know, I think we had some discussion with the committee, so, and I just want to be clear. We serve the task force. We work in service of the task force. We are city staff. And so decisions around, you know, work and output and all of those things and policies and procedures and all of those things are in accordance with city policy and procedure. And so I just want to be very clear about that. And it's similar to the way that I, you know, kind of, the comparison I make is similar to PART, where there's an executive director, there's a community engagement manager that works with the committee, but they are city staff. And so they're, the same policies and procedures that apply to other members of city staff apply to all of us, no matter who we work with and how we serve. So I just want to make sure that I'm clear about that.
Yeah, and you know, I think this position was created because this entity was created. And so just as a professional courtesy, even though the city is going to control their destiny, but I would hope that as a professional courtesy.
Well, and I will say this also, let me go ahead and say this, and I will speak very lightly to this because we are in a public meeting in the same way, the same thing that I said to executive committee, in the same way that a lot of times conversations about personnel, you wouldn't want the public sitting in a personnel meeting for your organization. I think a public meeting is not necessarily the best place to discuss personnel issues for the city of Knoxville. And if there are decisions that are perhaps being made by us with regard to that person, I think it is appropriate for us to discuss that with you all. When individuals are making their own employment decisions, they have the ability to discuss that with whomever they choose.
Sure.
So some things may not have been communicated because it wasn't a decision that was made on our end, it was a personal decision. So I just want to be clear about that.
I don't think that it is what it is. I think what we want to do though is we want to learn from what is, if that makes sense. And so going forward, if I'm hearing correctly, all we're saying is that the areas in which we can influence, that we have the opportunity to do that.
Absolutely. And we'll continue to do that. And what I will always reiterate is if you all, one, we would try to do our best around communication. We try to also be very responsive. So if you all have questions as things are going on, please feel free to ask us at any time, especially if it's around a sensitive matter. Please feel free to reach out to us directly at any point in time. We'll be happy to answer those questions.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any other announcements? I did have, one thing that I wanted to say. I wanted to publicly thank Ms. Davidson and Chairperson Fitzgerald Baker and Ms. Porter for coming out to the Neighborhood Resource Fair. I think we had a great time. And I want to thank you guys for stepping in and stepping out. I know that it was a really busy weekend. It's been a busy few weekends, and all of us have been spread pretty thin. But I think we were able to share some great information. And as always, in between meetings, even if there are events or activities that you all feel like it would be great for us to share information at, please make those known to us, and we can try to coordinate having the presence there, and showing up with information. We're working on swag and information. I usually bring candy, but I forgot. And we have name badges for you all now that you can be easily identified as a task force member. So if you haven't, well, this was I think the first event with the name badges. So the next time you table, you'll have a name badge. But please make sure that if information comes up between meetings that you think we need to take action on and register for, then we will do our best to have a presence there, because we want to make sure that we all support you on that way as well.
This made me think, if you just make a note, if we could check for the first open house. And I also reason I say that because a lot of families will have the student there and students in the feeder schools. But if we can look at maybe also these Fulton open house dates and be there just to give information. One of the things, and there's a young lady in the audience who I personally invited, I would encourage y'all, if you run into people who have interest, please invite them to the meetings and ask them to help spread the word. But if we catch a lot of families and a lot of people at the schools. So perhaps we can at least have a corner of a table or an opportunity to share from the task force that will revive some interest and energy. And then when we have our social media presence, website presence, we can get more community engagement and input.
You said social media, and it made me think about, and this will be something that we will raise the question about social media. We can try to do some work on it in a future meeting to maybe have, whether it's in a starting maybe an executive meeting or in a larger body, some conversation, how our comms department, so typically, for committees and or initiatives that are connected to the city in that way, there is the capacity to establish some social media presence that is, like, again, I'll go back to the park. So their social media is managed by city staff. I think maybe does the city have their own? So the Neighborhood Advisory Council, the same way, that is kind of managed by city staff. But in addition to kind of social media presence, one thing that we do as a part of additional support and onboarding for folks who are serving on committees in this capacity is sometimes provide some additional comp support and training, because it may be that media folks reach out to you all for different things, and we want you all to feel as confident and prepared to deal with those as possible. And so we can talk to some folks in our comms department to see if they can come and provide some additional insight on what some of the communications pieces could look like.
All right, so that's one of the things that I asked the Community Engagement Committee to look at for their report. Also considering the challenges when you open yourself up to that platform. But I imagine the committee creating a social media calendar. So there are certain things that we know they're not a surprise, they're going to happen annually. Certain holidays, recognitions, acknowledgements, and what we want to say about those that can be done in advance. Also, these announcements about some of the events that are taking place, we want to do that. Wish you well back to school, those types of things. And so the comms team for the city helping to support that would be great, because I don't think it'll be too heavy of a lift, since so much of it can be put like in a calendar and done in advance or one time. Now, there may be an occasion when we want to make a special post, and I think the Community Engagement Committee will make that recommendation after they meet, but just let us know what we need to do to launch it.
I know we spoke about, we're general questions right now, right?
Yes.
I know we spoke about the social media, even at the last meeting, getting the support with the city. You also spoke about the working groups and the swag. Just so it doesn't fall through the cracks, was there a a committee that those should be a line item and moving forward, or just so we're continuing to work on it, so.
Yes. So in our document where we identified our strategic plans and our focus, I believe, if you all can help me, I believe the committee aligns with each one, or working group aligns with each one. I would ask and believe that that's community engagement, but it also is a crossover with investment, so maybe that should be an agenda item for both committees and to hear your input on the working groups. But what we really need is a deadline. Like, we're going to launch these working groups by this date.
Well, I think that's a great idea. I think, maybe just picking one of the committees just to kind of, just so we can develop that.
So what do you all think as far as the committee that should have the spearheaded the development of our working groups and moving that forward?
I sent it out last night. I sent the working group document that I had created. Now, I'm in the investment committee, but that was just, I just want to expedite the creation.
Do you think that the investment committee would be the best choice then?
I mean, I think the framework, I think community engagement would be the best committee for that to work inside of.
And then the recommendations go back to investment.
Correct. I think it would work better that way.
All right, so community engagement committee, that will be something that should be included in your report. It's just some suggestions for how we can, one, select or identify members for our working groups, which working groups we'll actually have. I would say we don't have to start with all of them. You might pick one or two so that we can have a pilot and get used to this structure. But if we could get that, if that could be an item for discussion on your agenda for next week, that would be great. And then refer to Brandon's document. It's been some work done, so we're just ready to take action at this point. In the words of my pastor, if all hearts and minds are clear, can I get a motion to adjourn? Second?
Second.
All in favor? I'm not gonna ask you. All in favor? All right, thank you all.